The debate continues over the City of Charleston's Palmetto Artisans program. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down one-on-one with community activist Shakem Ahket one-on-one. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores, or listen to this interview later on the free iHeartRadio app. Shakem Ahket.
Hey, peace, brother.
It's good to see you again.
Man, blessings, wonderful.
Likewise.
Yes, sir.
Well, as we sit here right now, let me talk to you about some developing news.
Okay.
And this is the headline from Channel 5 on WCSC.com. New Orleans man charged in shooting death of Charleston Black Lives Matter activist, that is. You said this on your Facebook page on 8 hours ago, quote, "He murdered our comrade. Give him the electric chair. He took away someone we loved and admired." Talk to me about the Muhammad Baha that you loved and admired.
Man, he's a wonderful soul, beautiful soul. I mean, it's really still hard to wrap our mind around the whole thing and really kind of feel the loss. It's really still astonishing after all of this time, especially seeing the videos and things that he's done, and us actually reliving his work and still making it or bringing it into fruition. It's still kind of a touchy subject for us. I'm glad that this occurred. I'm glad somebody with intimate knowledge of the situation turned him in. There's a lot of skepticism around, what happened and how he, this whole thing came about with the witness. But one thing that I always have been telling people is that when this happened, if somebody actually knew, or when somebody realized who that person was that got killed, Muhyiddin, somebody would turn him in. And I always said that because, the fight and the desire and the strength and the fortitude that he possessed, I knew it was somebody around that murderer that would say, you know what? My heart will not allow me to go one more day with having this information and letting whoever did it stay on the street. And I believe that's what happened.
Let me turn you back here to Charleston. I know that we and I talked over Facebook Messenger last night, and you told me this around 5 o'clock yesterday. We have a meeting with the Charleston Police Department and City Council at 11. And obviously you're going to talk with those particular folks about the ongoing situation between the Palmetto Rose program and the Palmetto Rose, kids. Where are we with this? Or better yet, if you were to sit down with them and look them in the eye, what would you say right now?
Well, the first thing we got to realize is right now we are going through a phase in our community with opposing sides of the argument. And I believe that, black civil rights activists have betrayed us in this situation. I'm going to tell you one thing.
Okay.
Elder Johnson and Dot Scott, they got on paper, they went on a Post and Courier on TV, and the only thing, or the one main point or key point that they hit on, is the fact that the little boy shouldn't have ran. Okay, my whole take is, we shouldn't have law enforcement officers chasing down young 16, 15, 14-year-old boys for selling $2 roses, right? I mean, look at the issue with Walter Scott. And this is why I say, unfortunately, Mayor Tecklenburg has surrounded himself with blacks who are willing to do his bidding versus the bidding of the people. And I'm explaining why.
Okay.
The argument that they're making, right? When Walter Scott got shot and killed, these black civil rights activists took an issue when white people said Walter Scott shouldn't have ran. We were upset. No, you can't, say that he shouldn't have ran. No, the officer shouldn't have used excessive force and killed him, shot him 8 times in the back. So then the white people turned around and said, well, he should have paid his child support. If he would have been paying child support and obeying the law, guess what? He wouldn't have been dead. The civil rights activists, they didn't want to hear that. They said, no, even if he didn't pay his child support, that still didn't warrant the unjust laws or the unjust practices of the North Charleston Police Department in doing all of these petty traffic stops and these investigatory stops. Whenever they turn around and say, well, you know what? Walter Scott shouldn't have tried to fight the officer and he would have still been alive today. See, their whole take on this right now with the with the young man is the same exact argument that a lot of whites were using to justify the murder of Walter Scott. They didn't want to hear it. Now this situation happens and they get up and say, well, the guy shouldn't have ran. So what they're doing now, right, is instead of, see, in the Walter Scott situation, when you looked at the situation, we looked at the bigger picture and what was happening in the city of North Charleston. We said, okay, there's a lot of investigatory stops. Blacks are disproportionately being stopped versus whites. We started looking into the police department, right? You had Doc Scott, Elder Johnson, and other civil rights activists like all of us, where we started looking into the laws and what actually made or created the circumstance that led Officer Slager and Walter Scott in this chase. We looked at systematic racism. We started breaking everything down to the minute detail, and we understood that there needed to be more transparency in a police department that for years and years had been engaging in practices that made it almost blatantly racist when you start digging into it. Now, when you look at this situation, the same people who fought so hard for that are mysteriously silent. They're not looking at the ordinance and how it specifically is targeting young black males and criminalizing a behavior that should be legal. They're not looking at the fact that Charleston Police Department has had that same type of investigatory stop procedure that North Charleston Police Department had. They're not fighting. See, they're not fighting, and this is what upsets me. The same energy that they use to fight against Keith Summey, they're not using that to fight against Tecklenburg. The reason why, Summey is a white Republican. So in our minds, he's easy for the taking for a lot of black people, right? Because a lot of us, not me, but a lot of us are blacks and we're Democrats. So it's easy to fight corruption in the ranks of what you would call the Republican Party. But when our own party is dirty, we want to breeze over it. We don't want to call it out. You know, we let these guys into our churches, and, you know, I call it the Roy Willie effect. You know, and the reason why I call it the Roy Willie effect is because, you know, Roy Willie, they just were involved in one of the biggest disappointing losses in the history of the state. And what they do is they insulate themselves from attacks by surrounding themselves with black leaders like Elder Johnson and Doc Scott to do their bidding. Listen, if Keith Summey would have taken out an unsecured high-risk loan for $80,000 without the court's permission from a 94-year-old black woman with Alzheimer's, if Keith Summey did that, what do you think Elder Johnson would be doing right now? What do you think Doc Scott would be doing right now? They would be all over the place if that was Keith Summey. Mayor Tecklenburg does it. Nobody says nothing. When Keith Summey appointed Chief Driggers as the head of the police department, do you know the black civil rights leaders were upset because he didn't appoint Chief Burgess? The first thing they did was go after Keith Summey. You racist. You overlooked this man who was born and raised in North Charleston. You passed him up. He's been on the force his whole life. You passed him up for Chief Driggers, who was a chaplain. And they started going hard. But guess what? Mayor Tecklenburg goes and looks over a black man who's in the same situation as Chief Burgess, passed him up. But guess what the civil rights leaders say about that? Nothing.
And you're talking about North Charleston. Let me go to your Facebook page on July 24th. You said this, quote, while y'all are not supporting our stand to help keep our young black children from being harassed by law enforcement officials in downtown Charleston for selling Palmetto roses. Today, on Ashley Phosphate and Rivers Avenue, this guy is making money doing what our kids downtown can't. I can only be mad at the black people because we're trying to fight the mayor and Charleston City Council. And even though we are rattling the cage, it should be way more. Y'all won't be satisfied until whites have started making a fortune off the sweetgrass tradition and your black behind is gentrified out of business. Mark my words, we'll be crying later on, that is, because we refuse to embrace the Gullah Geechee culture. It's now or never. Facebook outrage isn't good enough. Talk to me about that Gullah Geechee culture in your mind.
That's who we are as a people. That's our blood. That's our conscience. That's our spirit. That's our soul. When we see the city of Charleston being gentrified, and we actually see a lot of those young boys who are out there, you know, still engaging in that age-old practice of sweetgrass, we have to help the process. We have to train, coach, develop, teach, and train, coach, develop, and teach. Because what we're going to end up doing is turning a blind eye to what's going on, and by the time we turn around and look again, you're going to have sweetgrass baskets sold in stores. You're going to be having it manufactured by, I would say, machines and people who have the ability to do it in mass. And once that begins to happen, then we're going to be shut completely all the way out. The city of Charleston has a $9 billion, and I heard it was more than that. I was looking at a couple articles, so don't quote me on this number because it could be higher. But we have a $9 billion tourist industry. All of it is built on the backs of slaves, suffering, torture, war. This whole area, when you stop, you look at the Nathaniel Russell House, slave. When you go on Chalmers Street, slave. You go look at the Battery, slave, the war. I mean, everything in Charleston is built on the history, the memory, and the legacy of slavery. So if we don't, I would say, insert ourselves into what's right for us and what is owed to us, if we allow it to disappear, then we're doing our future generations a disservice because we have not fought for them to be able to have a stronghold in a $9 billion tourist industry that is built on our history as a people.
And you talk about numbers and research. When you look at the Palmetto Artisans program for the city of Charleston, how many kids are there in your mind?
I believe last time I read it was like 30, 31. So what I believe and I talked to a lot of the young boys, okay, and I think this is where a lot of the confusion is coming from, because people just quick to say, well, you know, I talked to the councilman at the last meeting. He said, well, it's not the young boys in the program that's the problem, it's the young boys that's not in the program that's the problem. I told him that's a lie. When you go out there, if you go out there right now and you go talk to the young boys, they're going to tell you, and I got videos of it on my Facebook page, they tell you, we cannot make money sitting in this one location. We can't do it. The money is not there like how it used to be. Two, they're going to tell you, not only have we been secluded and segregated from the money, two, the businesses do not let us use the bathroom. So when we go in and we ask somebody, hey man, can we please use your bathroom? You know, a lot of time the businesses tell them no. Sometimes that is where a lot of the quarrels and the arguments begin. Three, they complain about the signs. The reason why is because if you have a tourist who's new to the area and they see a sign that just says, you know, the sale of Palmetto roses is illegal, you know, they're going to look at everybody with Palmetto roses as being illegal because they don't understand the program. They don't understand who's who. So immediately what they're going to do is just, we're not going to buy it all together because they got signs. So they're not going to say, hey, are you legal? How do we know you're legal? They're just going to not engage in buying it all together. So that's what's hurting them. So the children who have entered in the program legally and are out there selling roses legally are citing the problem. And that is why a lot of them who went through the program abandon the guidelines of the program because it says it totally inhibits them from making money. So the reason why we're on the market, you know, every week with bullhorns and signs and loudspeakers is because if you're going to prevent our children from going down there and selling, guess what? We're going down there. And if you thought they're complaining about the children, they're going to be complaining about us. And we're unapologetic. We will not stop. We will continue to escalate. We will send Mayor Tecklenburg a message. We will send City Council a message. We want the signs taken down immediately. Not only do we want the signs taken down, we understand that training needs to be more extensive. Not only more extensive, it needs to be a continuing follow-up. There needs to be constant feedback. There needs to be growth, development, coaching, feedback. Coaching, development, feedback. So all of these things need to take place, and we're going to continue to escalate.
And you, matter of fact, you talk about the protest. You posted this on July 1st. You said this quote, "Man, I pissed off so many business owners and tourists last week. They were calling the police department left and right. Unfortunately, they couldn't do anything about it because it was legal. I informed the carriage riders that they were being lied to anyways. LOL. If the little children can't make money on the market, then we will crash the local economy and really give them something to complain about." During this entire discussion about the Palmetto Roses and the kids and the city of Charleston and the city council, have you been able to sit down one-on-one with the business leaders in the market area?
No, I haven't actually done that yet. In due time, that will come.
Okay.
But first and foremost, when it comes down, and what I tell a lot of people, I've been negotiating and talking to politicians for a long time. And unfortunately, in the city of Charleston, they don't understand when people come to them in civility. They don't. That's why we're in the situation we're in now, because when you come to them and you explain to them about what goes on and you give them, you know, articulate explanations, you show them the numbers, you try to really have a decent conversation with them, they'll X you out. They'll, oh, okay, yeah, I understand. They'll take it, look at it, oh, that sounds good, and they won't do nothing about it. Unfortunately, in this city, the way how you get a message out is when you start doing things that are outside of the norm and you engage in practices that are very unpopular, that sometimes make a lot of people mad. And then and only then, sometimes when you begin to affect public opinion and you start ruffling feathers, then people are willing to say, okay, before this blows up, we need to sit down and have a talk about this. Because like I said, we don't have nothing to lose but our chains. So if we got to go down to the market and every week we make people mad and we interrupt the flow of business and we have a legal right to make people mad, guess what? That's what we're going to do. That's what protesting is for. We have a right to protest. So if they stop the protest, then guess what? It's going to be a bigger issue because now they'll be looking at a lawsuit. So eventually there's going to come a point in time where the situation is going to reach a boiling point and we're going to have to sit down and have a discussion.
Is your approach, is your message unpopular right now in your mind?
Well, it's unpopular with the Negro leaders and the Negro establishment, but it's popular with the people. See, when I talk about the Negro establishment, though, like I said, I call it the Roy Willie effect, because, you know, the liberals sit back and they think of ways on how to insulate themselves from attack. So what they'll do is I'm talking to the mayor and city council, and you will have the Negro leaders that's around them. They'll come and attack me and brothers and sisters who are around me, and they'll just say stuff like, oh, he shouldn't have ran, you know, or something crazy like that. And we're talking about trying to change or make the ordinance, you know, more complete, and that will bring an end to law enforcement chasing down young children like they got guns and crack, and all they got are roses and $80. And we'll try to have a meeting and talk about that, and then you have people come out in the newspaper talking about he shouldn't have ran from the police. See, it's unpopular with them because it strikes at the people who pay them. You know, they're getting, Tecklenburg supports them. They give him, you know, these NAACP awards and these national action. Now, National Action Network, the leader is Charles Tyler. So I don't want to, I'm not attacking National Action Network because Charles Tyler is the leader of National Action Network in this area, not Elder Johnson. Elder Johnson is not the leader. Charles Tyler is the leader. So I'm not attacking NAN because Charles Tyler does an excellent work. But when you have, the pseudo leaders of NAN giving out awards that they shouldn't be giving out, it's Tecklenburg trying to use them against us who are the grassroots leaders. And when he uses them to attack us, what he does is he tries to frustrate us and to have us fighting unnecessary battles instead of going at them and saying, this is what we need to be working out to make our city operate more smoothly.
This might be a silly question, but where's the poll on this? How many people support these kids and how many people do not support what they're doing in your mind?
Well, I believe a lot. I guess I can say my view may be biased because, I have a large group of, on social media, I have a large amount of people who, I communicate with and I interact with. So, of course, in my sphere, it's going to be a lot of people who support the children. I've seen overwhelming numbers. But then, in other circles, there might be some people who, say, well, he shouldn't have ran. Or, it's when you start really looking at it, I know I have a lot of people that are with me and with the agenda of the children who are ready to help the children, coach them, develop, teach, train, and to help them understand the art of selling, right? To help them understand how to communicate, to help them understand how to present themselves. A lot of people want to see the children succeed. But what the city is doing, they put together a sham program. Well, it might not have been sham when they first put it together, but once time went along, people kind of really, the people who originated it left. So now it's in the hands of people who really didn't care. So what they're doing now is utilizing the program as a means to sequester, discourage, and block the children from entering into the most lucrative part of the city to make money. So the city has actually used the program now as a means to discourage young blacks from engaging in entrepreneurial practices. And even though some people might say, well, the children are rude, right? Okay, so let's look at that. You got these young children, all of us, when we were 15 and 16, how many of us were well-mannered, proper, and we all had our bumps and bruises. We're young. But the thing is, look at their energy, the energy that they have to go out every day and to try to make an honest living. You got adults who don't even do that. So you got children who going above and beyond trying to do something positive. We need to help them grow. We need to take law enforcement out of the picture. We don't need law enforcement chasing these young children down. Now, if they're accused of committing an actual crime or breaking in somebody's house or stealing, yes, law enforcement then needs to step in. But until then, if it's just a young person selling a rose, law enforcement does not need to step in. The only way law enforcement needs to come in is if a crime has been committed and they've broken the law.
Okay, you're going to meet with the mayor and the city council at 11 a.m.
Well, I don't know about the mayor. Oh. I don't know, I don't know. But it's some important people. Okay. I don't know if he's going to be there.
Okay, those important people now, what would you look in their eyes and say?
Well, these are what we want. If we're not willing, if nobody's willing to compromise, then we'll be back on the market this weekend.
And obviously, when you look back at July 2nd, that happened on Monday. I heard about it on Tuesday. I was working in the market area on that Monday. Okay. But when you look back at that event from July 2nd to right now, what still plays in your mind about this event?
What's discouraging, what plays in my mind is, how can we, as a black community who have witnessed our children being excommunicated in the public school system, being excommunicated in jails, being, excommunicated in underfunded neighborhoods and living in areas of poverty and desolation and despair, with all of the negative things that are happening in our communities. how can we let a ray of hope that these children bring with, you know, entrepreneurialism and the spirit of getting rich legally, how can we allow them to be bullied by a mayor who, I would say, tries to tries to get us to love him by wearing dashikis and playing the piano and saying stay woke and going to these black events and going to these churches? How can we allow this man to play us and play our children like they criminals, and all they're doing is making $2 roses and selling them, and then we give him a pass for taking $80,000 from a 94-year-old black woman who's an Alzheimer's patient? We allow him to do that without regard of the law. Oh, he didn't know he was breaking the law. But we can't, that's a double standard. So that's what's really upsetting me, and it's no compromise. No compromise.
Now, I know that you are on social media a lot. Say if a tourist from Utah emails you privately about what the artisan program or the artisan program is, what would you say to them?
Well, okay, so I was just letting them know the artisan program started in 2007. It was designed to actually help the young men and women who were out selling roses. It was designed to help them to be better salespeople, to have better approaches. It was designed to build their human potential. You know, in the beginning, there was no sort of punitive, there was no RLs. The RLs factor would be, you know, get in this program or else you go to jail, or we lock you up and take you home, detain you, and drop you off to your parents. There was none of that. There was no punitive aspect of the program. The program was fully designed for growth and development. It wasn't until later on to where these punitive things were put in place, like the limitation of the area that they can sell. So the program in and of itself, when it started, was good, and I totally appreciate it, and I think we might need to revisit how we can make that better, and we take out a lot of those punitive aspects of it, and we take down the signs, and the program is designed, and I would just, you know, let them know the program is designed to strictly build their potential as salespeople and entrepreneurs.
And as we sit here right now, how is Mr. Gerald doing right now?
I don't know, good question, but I wish him the best. What I don't want him to do is to be discouraged. I don't want him to listen to all of the Negro leaders that have been sold out that just say, oh, you shouldn't have run from the police. Because our message and my message to him is that a police shouldn't even be chasing you for a $2 rose in your hand trying to make a living. A police should never chase you down for that. The only way the police should chase you down is if you are caught criminally doing something that is depriving somebody of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What that young man was doing was not depriving anybody from life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness. So technically, he is not committing a crime. Like Martin Luther King Jr. said, we have a moral obligation to disobey unjust laws. So that law is unjust. We have a moral obligation to fight it, disobey it, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure that these young women and men are able to make money in an area that their ancestors and the legacy of their ancestors is profited off of in the tune of over $9 billion.
Shakem Ahket by Jonathan Thor.
Yes,
Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, sir. You take care. Appreciate
I appreciate
you, brother.
that.
Yes, sir. No problem.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.